The champagne glass slipped from Bianca's hand and shattered against the marble floor. The sound cut through the carols like a warning bell. Her perfect smile froze, but her eyes flicked to the red folder I held. I could see her pulse jump in her neck. My name is Miriam Holloway. I'm 69 years old, and my own son and his wife stole my husband's inheritance, then erased me from their lives to hide it. For 7 years I stayed silent. I let them call me forgetful, pitiful, old. But what they didn't know was that every visit they skipped, every photo they cropped me out of, every dollar they took, left a trail. And tonight, under the Christmas lights, I was going to make them follow it. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family, because sometimes betrayal doesn't look like yelling or slammed doors. Sometimes it wears a smile across a holiday table. Sometimes it calls you mom. I thought I understood grief when I buried my husband. I thought I knew what loneliness meant when I ate Christmas dinner alone. But what I learned later, that was something else entirely. This story isn't about revenge. It's about proof. I remember the smell of cinnamon and old paper better than most faces. That's what the library smelled like the year I retired, like the world had been folded neatly into silence. I'd spent 40 years balancing budgets, cataloging history, fixing broken bindings. Order made sense to me. People didn't, especially family. When Robert, my husband, passed from a stroke, the house felt too large, but I stayed. Danny said, "Mom, you shouldn't live alone. We'll find you a place closer." He didn't mean with them. He meant near enough to visit on holidays. Still, I handed him an envelope of $7,000, a deposit, he said, for a bigger home. "You'll have your own room, Mom." That promise lived in my chest like a small flickering light. It died the day I saw their house. Bianca greeted me in white sweater, white smile, white wine glass. The house smelled of citrus and something artificial. There was a perfect family photo over the fireplace, Bianca, Danny, little Aiden, and baby Talia. 4 matching sweaters. I wasn't in it. "Oh, we didn't have time to call you that day," she said, when she caught my stare. It was a last-minute thing. I laughed like it didn't matter, but the laugh stuck somewhere between my ribs. The guest room, she promised, it was an office. Bianca's boutique orders filled the closet. Her garment rack blocked the window. "It's temporary," Danny said, rubbing the back of his neck. Once we fixed the basement stayed unfinished for 7 years. I told myself not to be dramatic. Families change. You're lucky they're close by. I repeated it every night while stirring soup for one. I didn't know it back then, but that mantra was how I kept from screaming. The first Christmas after Robert died, I cooked enough for 6. Turkey mashed potatoes, his favorite green bean casserole. I set the table, folded the napkins like he used to triangle knife fork. Spoon, exact spacing. Then I waited. Danny called at 5 p.m. "Mom, we're at Bianca's parents'. It's complicated. You understand, right?" The phone buzzed with another notification, Bianca's post. Family complete. Everyone smiling under a gold wreath. I zoomed in. There was my casserole on the table, still in my dish. I didn't cry. I just turned off the oven light and scraped my own dinner into a bowl. The chair across from me stayed empty, like it was waiting for someone who'd forgotten my address. Years blurred. Birthdays came and went. They'd send pictures, the kids in matching pajamas. Bianca cutting cakes, bigger than her boutique's profits could justify. I started noticing small inconsistencies. The luxury handbags, the business trips, the whispers at church about loans unpaid. Then, one rainy afternoon, a knock rattled my front door. I opened it to a thin man holding an envelope under his coat. "Mrs. Holloway." "I used to work with Graham Ellison, your late husband's probate lawyer. My name's Elliot Ng." Late husband's lawyer. That phrasing wrong immediately. Robert's estate had been settled years ago. Still, I let him in. The smell of wet wool followed him to the kitchen. He placed the envelope on my table like it was radioactive. "I don't know if you'll thank me for this," he said, "but you should see it." Inside, a printed email chain between Danny and Ellison. Subject line: "Adjustment of will. Urgent." The first line of Danny's message read, "She won't fight it. She never does." The rest was worse. There were bank transfer records, notarization dates, an affidavit claiming Robert Holloway's spouse was unreachable, presumed deceased, signed by my own son. I felt my pulse in my teeth. "This can't be right," I said. Elliot just looked at me, eyes tired. I left that firm because of this. They said it was harmless, just paper cleanup. But someone got paid $50,000 for that cleanup. I don't remember how long I sat there after he left. The clock ticked loud enough to drown the rain. I walked to the mirror above the sink. My face looked smaller somehow. Not older, emptier. That night I pulled down the file box Robert had labeled Legal Final. It was heavy with dust. Inside his original will, the one I'd seen him sign at the kitchen table 15 years earlier, he left half to me, half to Danny. But the court copy, the one on file, showed 100% to Danny Holloway and spouse Bianca Cortez Holloway. I pressed the two documents side by side. The signature, Robert's pen pressure, was real on one, lighter on the other. Someone had scanned, edited, printed, re-signed. The line that read, Spouse Miriam Holloway, was deleted entirely. That deletion was neater than a scalpel. In the days that followed, I tested my son without revealing what I knew. Danny, I said one afternoon, remember that investment your father mentioned, the property paperwork? He laughed too quickly. Mom, that was ages ago. Don't worry about that stuff. Bianca behind him placed her hand on his arm, subtle, possessive. Her nails were blood red. Later, when I offered to babysit, she hesitated. Oh, we're keeping the kids on a schedule. Too much stimulation confuses them. I wanted to ask confuses them about who their grandmother is. But I didn't. Instead, I started writing everything down. Dates, receipts, phone calls. The librarian in me had found her next catalog. Sometimes I'd drive past their house at night. Through the bay window, I'd see shadows moving Christmas tree lights, reflecting off Bianca's sequined dress, Danny pouring wine. From the sidewalk, it looked perfect. But if I stood long enough, I noticed the small things, Bianca's hand never touching his. The way she angled herself for the reflection instead of the man beside her. One evening, the front door opened and Aiden, my grandson, ran out barefoot into the yard. I froze. He didn't see me. He was chasing after a toy drone. Bianca's voice floated after him. Aiden, get inside. You'll catch a cold. Her tone sharp, not worried, just annoyed. Danny scooped the boy up, smiled and waved vaguely toward the street. For a moment, I thought he'd recognize my car. He didn't. I drove home that night with the radio off. My hands smelled like steering wheel leather and cold air. I didn't know it back then, but that was the night I stopped being invisible and started watching. The next months became a study in silence. You'd be surprised how loud it can get when no one calls you anymore. The phone stopped ringing, except for appointment reminders and telemarketers. Even church felt smaller, like the pews had learned to leave an empty space where I used to sit with them. One Sunday after service, I saw Bianca across the parking lot, loading the kids into her car. She waved too brightly. Miri. Oh, I've been meaning to call you, she said. Danny's been so swamped with work. Of course, I answered. And you've been busy too, I hear. Her smile faltered just a second. It was the kind of second I could live on. Later, I saw her Instagram new inventory, new photo shoots, new dresses. Each caption read, Building the life we deserve. I stared at those words until they blurred. When spring came, I started volunteering at the library twice a week. It felt good to have order again, returning books to the right shelves, the faint sound of pages turning. Sometimes Aiden and Talia's school field trips came through. I'd watch from behind the shelves as they passed. Bianca never noticed. Once Aiden lingered near the children's section and looked up at me. You look like my grandma, he said softly. Then his teacher called him away. That night, I sat in the dark with a single lamp on staring at that sentence. You look like my grandma, not you are. It carved something deep. A few weeks later, I ran into Rowan Pierce at the grocery store. She was loading folders into her cart like someone who never really stopped working. I remembered her from years back when she'd handled a library contract dispute. Miriam Holloway, she said, surprised. You still in town? Barely, I said. We ended up at a diner down the street. The coffee was bitter, the kind that leaves a metallic aftertaste. I told her everything about the envelope, the forged will, the missing money. She didn't flinch once. When I finished, she folded her hands and said, If what you're saying is true, you don't need revenge. You need a chain of custody. That was the beginning of my education in proof. Rowan became my quiet ally. She showed me how to document without emotion, to think like an investigator. Every note I took had a date, time, and source. I started buying folders, labeling them with neat blue handwriting, transfers, witnesses, motive. At night, I'd spread everything across my kitchen table like puzzle pieces that used to be my family. Sometimes I'd hear Robert's voice in my head, calm and practical facts over fury, Mary. Always. One afternoon, I drove to the county records office. The clerk was a teenager chewing gum, scrolling through her phone. When I asked for property history on the Holloway residence, she typed without looking up. "You sure you're on the deed, ma'am?" "No," I said. That's exactly the problem. What she printed made my skin prickle. The house was purchased, cash, $300,000. Same month the will was settled. No mortgage, no loan. I traced the date with my finger. Robert's will had been finalized just 10 days before. That night I called Danny. "Do you ever think about Dad's legacy?" I asked. A pause, then his voice stiff. "Mom, you're not going to start with this again, are you?" "With what? With the past. You need to move forward. We've all had to." I asked quietly. He didn't answer. Bianca's voice came faintly in the background. "Tell her you'll call later." The line went dead. I looked at the phone for a long time before setting it down. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was packed like snow pressing against a window. By autumn, the pattern was clear. Every time I got close, Bianca built a wall. A miscommunication here, a changed address. There. Invitations that never arrived. Even my mail started rerouting, bank statements missing, church newsletters redirected. Rowan called it isolation by design. Then one night, an email from Elliot appeared in my inbox. Subject: "You didn't get this from me." Attached was a PDF bank transfer logs. $50,000 from D. Holloway to Ellison Consulting, LLC. The date matched the will adjustment, a note in the memo field. Final installment. I sat in my kitchen until dawn, the light changing from orange to gray. Each piece of evidence felt like a blade. Around that time, the kids' school held a Christmas pageant. I decided to go uninvited. The gym smelled of sugar cookies and plastic chairs. I stood at the back behind the folding doors. When Aiden spotted me, he smiled, waved, whispered something to Talia. They both looked toward Bianca. She froze, then pulled them closer, whispering in their ears. Neither looked back. That was the night I realized Bianca wasn't just greedy. She was rewriting the story of who their family was. I left before the final song. Snow had started to fall thick and slow, muffling the world. Each flake felt like the minute hand of a clock counting down to something inevitable. Rowan called the next morning. "You ready to build a case?" she asked. I said yes. For months we traced every loose end. Rowan's office smelled of toner and stress. Her whiteboard was a battlefield, arrows connecting names and dates. Danny equals Ellison is Bianca equals Chase. It was Rowan who found Chase's connection to Bianca. "She's sloppy," Rowan said, pushing a tablet toward me. Restaurant invoices, private dinners, overlapping business accounts. He's married to a councilwoman, Lydia Whitaker. I scrolled through the images, Bianca laughing across a candlelit table, her hand on Chase's wrist. In the reflection of the restaurant window, you could see the flash of her diamond bracelet, the same one she wore at Aiden's baptism. I felt something old and sharp wake up inside me. When the boutique's financials came out, the picture was clear debt, hidden under vanity, taxes delayed, but the illusion maintained. Rowan smirked. Perfect woman, perfect life, perfect fraud. I didn't tell her the part that hurt the most. It wasn't the money. It was realizing my son had stood by and let it happen. That night I drove to the overlook above town. You could see all the Christmas lights from there, tiny houses glowing like promises. I sat in the car with the heater off, letting the cold bite my hands. "I don't want revenge," I whispered out loud. "I just want them to see me again." But deep down I knew that wasn't true. What I wanted was for them to see what I'd become, what they'd made me into. When Rowan called a week later, her voice was crisp. "I have what you need, but it's not pretty." She sent me a file. Inside were scanned notarizations. One of them forged so badly, the stamp bled. Next to the signature, I saw Bianca's handwriting, looping and perfect signing on behalf of. It wasn't just fraud. It was art. I printed everything, filed it, labeled it, evidence, final. Then I opened my calendar and circled December 25th. Silver Peak Lodge had a private dining room for 12. Ms. Renner, the manager, remembered me from years ago. "We're fully booked that week," she said. "I'll pay in full tonight," I replied. She hesitated. "That's unusual, Mrs. Holloway." "What's the occasion? Family dinner," I said. She smiled politely. "How nice." I signed the papers with steady hands. My voice didn't shake once. That night I went home and lit a single candle in front of Robert's photograph. "We built our lives on order," I said quietly. "Now it's time to restore it." The flame trembled, reflected in the glass like a heartbeat. I didn't know then that the world would soon hear my silence louder than their laughter. The first domino fell quietly. It always does. Bianca texted me in early December, a rare gesture. "Mom, could you please not bring gifts for the kids this year? We're trying to keep the house less cluttered." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Less cluttered. That was what I'd become, an inconvenience to be stored away. I typed a simple reply. "Of course." Then I went to the closet and wrapped 2 presents anyway. One for Aiden, a compass, like the one his grandfather used when he taught him to fish. One for Talia, a storybook I used to read to Danny. I left both on their porch before dawn, snow still fresh enough to hide my footprints. By the afternoon, Bianca posted a photo of the kids opening gifts under their tree, not mine. In the background of the picture near the window, I saw the compass box sitting unopened on the counter. That was when something in me shifted. I didn't want to hurt them. I wanted them to see. Rowan called later that week. "Our request for the Swift record went through," she said. "Transfer confirmed $50,000 to Ellison Consulting." "It's airtight." Her voice carried no joy, only precision. Proof doesn't feel like victory. It feels like standing on ice that's about to crack. Meanwhile, Bianca's boutique hosted its holiday launch gala. The local paper called her an inspiration for young entrepreneurs. I bought a ticket anonymously, dressed in gray, blending with the crowd. She floated through the room like she owned the air itself, diamond earrings, crimson dress, perfect posture. Danny followed half a step behind, smiling for cameras. Their photographer, Aunt Dahlia, snapped pictures of every angle except the one where I stood. When she caught sight of me, her eyes flicked, but she didn't approach. Bianca leaned in to whisper something to Danny. He turned. Our eyes met across the room. His expression was part guilt, part fear. Then, Bianca took his hand and led him away. I stayed until the end and watching them laugh under the fairy lights. I could almost hear Robert saying, "Don't act without cause," so I waited. The next morning, Rowan sent me a PDF of HOA minutes. The house Danny and Bianca owned had been purchased cash, $300,000. No loan, no paper trail, matching their income. "It's clean laundering," Rowan said. Classic inheritance flip. They got the funds, hid them in a shell, then rebought through a holding company. "So it's theft," I said. "It's family," she corrected quietly. Each new proof left a bruise that wouldn't fade. Then came the CPS report. Bianca had filed a complaint claiming I was mentally unstable and unfit to be around children. The knock on my door came on a Wednesday morning. A woman in a gray coat introduced herself as Child Protective Services, Mrs. Holloway. They inspected my kitchen, my fridge, even my medicine cabinet. The officer's tone was gentle, but her clipboard decisive. "You understand this is routine. We're just following up on a concern." When she left, she gave me a sympathetic smile. "You seem perfectly fine, ma'am." But it wasn't fine. It was a weapon. I called Rowan, shaking. "They're trying to erase me officially this time." "I'll handle it," she said. "Keep every document, every call." The next day, Rowan met me at a diner halfway between her office and my house. The waitress poured burnt coffee that tasted like rust, but I drank it anyway. Rowan slid a manila folder across the table. "Here's the kicker," she said. "We traced a notarization from Bianca's boutique to an insurance broker. 2 months ago, she tried to change the beneficiary on Danny's life insurance to herself in the event of sudden incapacity." I blinked. She planned for him to die. Rowan shrugged. Or she planned to make sure his assets were hers if he did. Outside, the snow fell heavier, muffling the sound of cars. I stared out the window, watching people walk by, couples holding hands laughing. I wondered if any of them knew what betrayal sounded like. It doesn't scream. It whispers in paperwork. A few days later, I got an email from Elliot. "You should check Bianca's social feed tomorrow. Something will surface." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I saw a photo of Bianca at a restaurant, Whitaker & Co. She was leaning across the table, fingers brushing the wrist of a man, not her husband. The caption read, "Celebrating new partnerships." Rowan confirmed it. Later, the man was Chase Whitaker, the restaurant owner and husband of councilwoman Lydia Whitaker. Political scandal wrapped in silk and lipstick. "This could destroy her," Rowan said. I whispered, "Good." But destruction wasn't enough. Proof had to be undeniable, procedural, final. That evening, I went to Silver Peak Lodge pretending to book a family dinner. Ms. Renner recognized me instantly. "You came here years ago, didn't you?" "For your anniversary," I nodded. "This time it's for Christmas." Her smile was kind but curious. "How many guests? 12? She hesitated. We'll need a deposit. I brought cash. When she handed me the receipt, her expression softened. You must love them very much. I smiled. I do. Enough to remind them who I am. As I stepped outside, the cold hit like truth-sharp bracing impossible to ignore. I watched the snow swirl under the lodge lights and thought every lie leaves footprints. You just have to wait for the snow to melt. The closer Christmas came, the quieter my phone became. Even the junk calls stopped. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to make the next move. Danny texted me 3 days before Christmas Eve. Mom, don't worry about coming this year. The roads will be bad, and we'll visit you after the holidays. I could almost hear Bianca dictating it beside him. I replied, drive safe. Then I printed one last set of documents. The sound of my old printer was like a heartbeat. Steady, mechanical, deliberate. Each page felt heavier than paper should. Rowan came over that night. We spread everything across my table, emails, transfer logs, photos, notarizations. This is your life, she said softly, and your evidence. I just want it to end, I said. It will, she promised, but not quietly. We rehearsed the plan. She'd arrive at Silver Peak early, ensure Ms. Renner's consent forms and cameras were signed off. Everything will be legal, Rowan said. No one can claim coercion. Then she paused. You sure you're ready for this, Miri? Once you show them, there's no turning back. I looked at the folder with Bianca's name embossed in red ink. I've been gone from my own family for 7 years. There's nothing left to turn back to. The next morning, I went to the cemetery. Snow blanketed Robert's headstone like lace. I brushed it away and laid down the envelope of signed affidavits. We built a family from truth, I whispered. They turned it into theater. So I'll give them a performance they won't forget. By evening, the wind had sharpened. The whole town shimmered under frost. I drove past Danny and Bianca's house on my way home. Through the curtains, I saw silhouettes, Bianca arranging gifts, Danny sitting still staring at nothing. Aiden and Talia ran across the living room, laughter bouncing off glass. For a moment, I almost stopped. But then I saw it. Bianca took the compass from Aiden's hand, said something, and tossed it into a drawer. The light from their tree flickered against my windshield like a pulse I didn't share anymore. The next day, Rowan called. Ms. Renner confirmed everything's ready. 12 seats, full course. Keycard log secured. Once you start, no one leaves until you decide. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Perfect. That night, I packed the folders carefully. Each name was handwritten in ink. Danny, Bianca, Victor, Lorraine, Dahlia, Chase, Rowan, Ms. Renner, Elliot. The rest of the seats symbolic placeholders for truth. I slid the evidence into labeled envelopes and tied them with ribbon. They almost looked like gifts. Before I turned in, I sat in my living room and opened the old family photo album. Robert's handwriting was still neat beneath each picture. Danny's first school day, Miri's new job, family dinner, 1998. In the newer photos Bianca had printed for me years ago, something strange stood out. The edges were cropped, not cut, but digitally altered. My reflection was missing in every mirrored surface. A coffee mug in my hand was gone, replaced with blank space. Even my shadow beside Robert had been erased. She'd been deleting me 1 pixel at a time. That realization burned colder than the snow outside. 2 nights before Christmas, I met Elliot in the back booth of a near-empty diner. He looked thinner, nervous. You didn't get this from me, he said again, handing over a flash drive. It's the original affidavit scan with metadata. Shows the signature was copied from a 2012 mortgage file. Identical pressure points. I exhaled slowly. That's it then. He nodded. Be careful. Ellison's not dead. He's been negotiating immunity with the DA. If he talks, this explodes bigger than you think. I smiled faintly. Then I won't need to raise my voice. After he left, I sat there with my coffee cooling beside me. The diner neon flickered in the window, painting my reflection in broken red light. For a second, I saw Robert's face in mine, steady, tired, but resolute. When I got home, the answering machine blinked. A message from Bianca Mom. I know we've had our differences, but let's not make this season awkward. You can come by for brunch if you want, just maybe leave early. Her voice was syrup sweet, too controlled. It wasn't an olive branch, it was a leash. I didn't delete the message. I saved it timestamped logged. Proof of image maintenance. Then I called Rowan. We're done waiting. Christmas night. 7 p.m. Everyone gets their seat. She hesitated, then said, Miri, this isn't vengeance anymore, it's exposure. I know, I said. That's what makes it clean. On Christmas Eve, I baked cookies the way Robert liked them, pecan shortbread, edges slightly burnt. I left a plate on the counter for myself, not for anyone else. It felt strange and peaceful to cook without pretending. Before bed, I looked out my window. Snow was falling again, thick and slow, covering everything. Somewhere across town, Bianca was arranging her perfect table, rehearsing her perfect smile. She had no idea that the guest list had already been written, and every lie she told was about to have a seat. I whispered into the quiet house. Tomorrow they'll finally see me. The refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked. Somewhere a branch cracked under the weight of snow, and I smiled, small, steady, unshaken, because I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I was waiting for truth. The sky above Silver Peak Lodge looked bruised gray, sinking into violet, the kind of cold that makes your lungs ache when you breathe. I arrived early, clutching the red folder to my chest like a weapon. Inside were 7 years of silence, bound together by paper clips and anger. Ms. Renner greeted me at the door. "Everything's ready, Mrs. Holloway," she said. "Dining room C, fireplaces, lit cameras are rolling per your consent forms." "Perfect," I said. My voice didn't shake. The room was warm but still. The table gleamed with polished oak, 12 chairs dressed with ivory napkins. I placed the folders carefully, each seat with its name in black ink. At the head of the table, I laid one last envelope. Truth. That one was mine. The first to arrive was Danny. His face was pale, uncertain. "Mom, what is this dinner?" I said. "A family dinner. You remember those." Before he could answer, Bianca swept in behind him, wrapped in white wool and perfume, so strong it cut through the scent of pine. She froze when she saw the table. "Where's everyone else?" she asked. "They're coming," I said. Moments later, Victor and Lorraine entered, nervous smiles glued on. Then, Aunt Dahlia clutching her camera. Rowan followed, professional as always, a quiet sentinel in a dark coat. Finally, Chase Whitaker stepped in expensive suit arrogance, barely masking panic. His eyes darted to Bianca. "You didn't tell me it was this kind of dinner." Bianca's laugh cracked like glass. Neither did she. The door shut softly behind Ms. Renner. The lock clicked. I stood. "Thank you all for coming. I know it's Christmas night and family time is precious, which makes it the perfect occasion to discuss what family really means." Danny shifted. "Mom, if this is about the will." "Oh, it's about much more than that." I slid the first folder across to him. "Open it." Inside was Robert's original will, his real signature, the affidavit of fraud. The paper trembled in Danny's hands. "Where did you... From the man you bribed?" I interrupted. $50,000 wired to Ellison Consulting. You called it a cleanup." Bianca's voice sharpened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I turned to her. "You filed a notarized affidavit declaring me unreachable. You claimed my death to collect my husband's inheritance. Tell me, Bianca, how many signatures did you forge before breakfast?" Her mask slipped for just a second. "You can't prove anything," actually, Rowan said from the corner, calm as a blade she can. "And we will. These are certified bank records and notarization logs. Your signatures, your timestamps." The room's air thickened. Firelight flickered against their faces like interrogation lamps. I moved to the next envelope. "Victor, Lorraine, you wanted to keep your daughter's boutique alive, didn't you? Mortgage payments, supplier debts, all settled 2 weeks after my husband's estate closed? You benefited too." Victor opened his mouth, but no sound came. Lorraine's pearls quivered against her throat. "Dahlia," I said, "do you remember deleting me from those family photos? Cropping me out because I didn't fit the aesthetic?" I slid a printed email toward her, Bianca's words in black and white. "Cut her out, she ruins the shot." Dahlia's lip trembled. "I just did what I was told." "Exactly," I said. "That's what everyone here did." Then I turned to Bianca. "Except you. You gave the orders." She laughed a sound that didn't reach her eyes. "What, you think you're some kind of avenging angel, Miri? You're a bitter old woman with too much time." I smiled faintly. "Funny. That's exactly how people describe you online now." Rowan tapped her phone, projecting an image onto the small monitor Ms. Renner had set up. Photos of Bianca and Chase at Whitaker and Combine, holding hands, faces too close. The timestamp 2 weeks ago. Chase's jaw tightened. "Bianca, what the hell?" Bianca turned on him. "You said those were deleted." Rowan's voice cut clean. "They were archived. The restaurant's internal system backs up every table cam for liability reasons. Public record, actually." The silence that followed was louder than shouting. Then, like divine timing, a phone buzzed. Chase's. He glanced down and his face drained of color. The caller ID flashed Lydia Whitaker. He hit ignore, but it was too late. The sound had filled the room. Bianca stood up, her breath ragged. "You planned this," she hissed. "You're insane." "No," I said softly. "Just thorough." Rowan stepped forward, placing one last folder on the table. "This is a proposed settlement agreement. Civil restitution signed tonight, or we file criminal charges in the morning. Forgery, fraud, conspiracy. You choose." Danny's eyes darted between us. "Mom, please don't do this. We can fix it." "Fix it," I repeated, "like you fixed the will. Like you fixed my name out of your children's lives." He swallowed hard, tears beginning to spill. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," I said. My voice was steady now, colder than the snow outside. "You meant to make it easy. You meant to make me disappear quietly." Bianca lunged forward, palms slamming against the table. "You won't win. You're nothing without this pity act." I leaned closer, inches from her face. "I don't need to win, Bianca. I just need the truth to exist where you can't edit it." She froze, because she knew this wasn't fury anymore. It was evidence. Ms. Renner's voice came from the corner. "Everything's been recorded, Mrs. Holloway, both audio and video." Bianca spun toward her. "You can't." "She can," Rowan interrupted. All participants were informed upon entry. Danny sank into his chair, head in his hands. Victor muttered a prayer under his breath. Lorraine dabbed her eyes. Dahlia simply stared at her camera, unable to lift it. I gathered the last folder and slid it toward Bianca. "Merry Christmas," I said quietly. "From the woman you buried alive." She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She knew what was inside every proof, every signature, every lie bound by her own handwriting. For a long moment, no one moved. The fire crackled, melting the edge of the tension, but not its weight. Then Rowan spoke softly. "We're done here." I reached for my coat. Danny looked up. "Mom, please, don't walk away." I stopped at the door, turned just enough for him to see the calm in my face. "I walked away years ago, Danny. Tonight, I just made it official." The lock clicked open behind me. The hallway air felt colder, cleaner. Outside, the snow had started again, soft and slow. My breath fogged in the air as I stepped into the night. Behind me, muffled voices rose. Bianca shouting, Danny pleading, the sound of lives collapsing under their own weight. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not happy, just free. I looked up at the mountain sky, gray bleeding into white, and whispered to Robert, "It's done." The wind answered like a sigh through pine needles. Somewhere behind me, the truth had finally found its seat. The morning after the dinner, the world was still. The news hadn't broken yet, but I could feel it humming beneath the surface like a fault line waiting for the first tremor. Rowan called me at dawn. "They signed the agreement," she said. Danny caved first. Bianca followed an hour later. "Good," I murmured. "Half of the assets will return to your name," she continued. "The rest goes into restitution." "But Miri, what? She's already making calls, trying to spin it, say, you're delusional, obsessed, vindictive." I smiled faintly. "Then let her. Every lie she tells now is recorded twice, once on paper, once in her own voice." I stood by the window, watching the frost glitter on the fence. It looked like the world had been reset overnight, cold but clean. For the first time in years, I brewed coffee without checking my phone for messages that wouldn't come. The smell filled the kitchen, mixing with the faint scent of burnt sugar from last night's cookies. I poured a cup, took a sip, and waited for the silence to settle. By noon, it arrived, the inevitable storm. My phone buzzed nonstop. Unknown numbers, reporters blocked calls. Rowan texted, "Don't answer any. They'll get the press release soon." Then one message made me pause. It wasn't from Rowan. It was from an unknown number, but the text was short and sharp. "Ellison isn't dead. He wants to meet. He wants—" I read it 3 times. My first instinct was disbelief, then a cold rush through my veins. I'd heard rumors, whispers, that Graham Ellison had vanished, that his heart condition had been a convenient story. Now it seemed he'd resurfaced. That night I met Rowan at the same diner where this began. The coffee was still bad. The air still smelled of grease and rain. "He's been in contact with the district attorney," she said. "Wants immunity for testifying against the Holloways and anyone connected to the fraud chain, including Bianca." I stirred my coffee slowly. "So he's not just saving himself. He's pulling the whole web down with him." "Exactly," she said. "And if he does, your case becomes precedent. Your name won't just be cleared, it'll make history." Outside, snow melted into slush and water traced patterns down the window. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Rowan leaned forward. What will you do when this is all over? I smiled softly. Buy a new chair. She frowned. A chair? The one at their dining table was always missing my seat, I said. I think it's time I had my own again. We both laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that comes after surviving a war you didn't sign up for. When I got home, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in rushed handwriting. Inside was a photograph, Bianca outside her boutique, reporters crowding her microphones, flashing like gunfire. On the back of the photo, one sentence was scrawled, "You can't erase what's public." I didn't know who sent it, Elliot Rowan, or perhaps Ms. Renner, but it didn't matter. It meant the truth was doing what truth always does, spreading quietly, relentlessly. I set the photo on the mantel beside Robert's picture and lit a candle. The flame wavered, reflected in the glass, then steadied itself. I whispered, "Justice isn't revenge, Robert, but it's the closest thing I'll ever get." The clock ticked, the house breathed, and outside the snow began to fall again, soft, soundless, absolute. They thought they had erased me. They thought I'd vanish into old age and silence. But they were wrong. They hadn't destroyed me. They'd handed me the one weapon they could never control: proof. If you've ever been made to feel invisible by your own family, then you understand what silence can do to a person. It eats at you, little by little, until one day you stop recognizing the sound of your own name. But here's the truth, silence is not peace. Sometimes it's just the space before a reckoning. My name is Miriam Holloway, and this was my reckoning. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, subscribe. Because this story isn't over. There are still truths waiting beneath the snow, old debts, hidden names, and one man who's come back from the dead to clear his conscience. Tell me where you're watching from. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and remember, justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it speaks in a calm, steady voice that finally gets heard. I'll see you in the next story.